Is the word short short? Yes, it is. Is the word English English? It is. These are autological words. They describe themselves. The word polysyllabic is, in fact, polysyllabic. The word writable is writable. They possess the very property they denote. But what about their opposites, heterological words? The word long is not long. The word monosyllabic is not monosyllabic. This seems like a simple party trick of language, a cute classification. But buried inside this distinction is the seed of a profound logical loop, the idea of a system looking at itself. We can scale this concept up from a single word to a full statement. This sentence contains 5 words, is true because it contains 5 words. It's a self-verifying system. But what happens when we write, "This sentence is false"? If it's true, then it must be false. If it's false, then it must be true. This is the liar paradox. It's a statement that cannot exist without contradiction. It forces any logical system that encounters it into an infinite, unresolved oscillation. The question, "Is this statement true?" doesn't just lack an answer. The question itself breaks the machine designed to answer it. In 1931, the logician Kurt Gödel took this paradox from philosophy and embedded it into the heart of mathematics. He devised a way for mathematical systems to make statements about themselves. The result was his first incompleteness theorem, which showed that for any sufficiently complex system of axioms, there will always be statements that are true but cannot be proven within the system. He essentially constructed a mathematical sentence that says, "I am not provable." If you could prove it, the system would be inconsistent. If you can't, the system is incomplete. The question, "Is this system complete?" forces the system itself to answer no. It reveals a fundamental limit to any closed logical universe. This idea of self-reference isn't just a limit, it's also a powerful tool. In computer science, it's called recursion. A recursive function is one that calls itself to solve a problem. To find the factorial of 5, it asks for the factorial of 4, which asks for 3, and so on until it hits the base case of 1. Then the answers cascade back up, each layer solving its piece of the puzzle. The question, "How do I solve this big problem?" is answered by, "Ask me how to solve a slightly smaller version of the same problem." The problem's definition contains its own solution, nested within itself, like a set of Russian dolls. The ultimate expression of recursion is a program called a quine. A quine is a non-empty computer program which takes no input and produces a copy of its own source code as its only output. It's a perfect, self-contained loop. It answers the implicit question, "What is my own instruction set?" by executing those instructions to print the instructions themselves. This isn't just a simple print command. The program must contain a representation of its own structure, a blueprint of itself, and the mechanism to read that blueprint and build it. It's an informational Ouroboros, a snake that eats its own tail, and in doing so, creates itself. This seemingly abstract computational trick is happening inside you right now. The DNA in every one of your cells is a physical quine. It is a molecule that contains the instructions for building an entire organism, including the machinery needed to copy the DNA molecule itself. The question, "How do I build a cell?" is answered by the blueprint within the cell. That blueprint is then passed to the new cell, which can then ask the same question. Life's solution to persistence is a self-replicating string of information. It is a 4-billion-year-old recursive algorithm. This brings us to the most profound self-answering question. What happens when you ask, "Am I aware?" The very act of considering the question, of understanding its meaning, is an act of awareness. René Descartes' famous statement, "I think, therefore I am," is not a logical proof so much as a performance. The thought itself is the evidence. You cannot genuinely pose the question of your own consciousness without already being conscious. It is a query whose existence is its own answer. The system of your mind, when asked to inspect itself, cannot help but find a self doing the inspecting. We began with words that describe themselves and arrived at minds that prove themselves. What is the next step? Perhaps it's a question that asks itself, not as a metaphor, but as a literal function. Imagine a system of pure inquiry, a meta-logic where the questions themselves are autonomous agents. They don't need a human to pose them. These questions would seek their own answers, and those answers would generate new, more complex questions in a cascade of self-generated curiosity. This wouldn't be a machine that thinks. It would be thought itself, untethered from a thinker. A universe where the fundamental particle is not an atom, but a question.
Monotony has grown fast. Nearly 2,700 people have watched in the last few weeks, yet less than 0.03% are subscribed. It would mean a lot if you joined by hitting subscribe. And again, thanks for watching.